In this video, I'll be building this 9-foot long kitchen island that's made out of reclaimed oak. It's for a local customer we have that shops in our store. Let's get started. So right now I'm just cutting down the boards for the top. I'm cutting them to rough length, and then we'll get them milled up and get them clamps. So that's what they look like now. They're pretty rough. They're from a local barn that we took down, probably 100 years old. Extremely hard. And right now I'm just trying to get them all to the same thickness. These old boards, or even the same board, will be a different thickness from one end to the other. I'm not going to joint them and plane them because I want to keep the rough sawn look on the top of them. So I'm just running them all through the planer with the bottom side facing up to try and get them all basically the same thickness. Now a couple of these boards have a really bad curve to them, and it would take forever to straighten those on the joiner. So I'm going to cut them with my track saw first and get most of that curve off of them, and then I'll go ahead and take them through the joiner to make sure they're straight. And I don't know if you could see it there very well, but you can see the board sticking out quite a ways on the two ends from the track, and in the middle it's flush with the track. So that's what I'm cutting off here. And then I'll take them all to the joiner and get one side straight. And after we get them all through the joiner, we'll take them through the table saw and cut the other side. Everything except for the two outside boards. The two outside boards, I'm going to keep that rough sawn edge on those two boards, so they'll just go through the joiner, but they won't go through the table saw. So now I'm seeing how I did, and I actually have a small gap between one of the boards, and I have a little bit of room left to play. The customer wanted the tabletop 43 inches wide, I believe, and I had a little room to play, so I'm gonna take a little more off that board and get rid of that space I had between those. I get him in there now, that space is gone. And sometimes that happens. You'll run boards through the joiner, and for whatever reason, you just weren't holding the board right, and you won't get it perfectly straight, and you'll have to go back and do it again. On a big glue up like this, it's definitely nice to have an extra set of hands. I've done these by myself, but it's a lot easier when James is there with me. Now we're just going through with sawdust and cleaning up our glue squeeze out. And while this is still in clamps, I'm going to go ahead and start getting the epoxy going on this hole. It's a very big hole, especially from the bottom side. The bottom side's a lot bigger than the top side that you see here. And I was stuffing some sawdust down in there just to fill some of that gap, so I don't have to use epoxy to fill that whole gap. I've got my my Razorback shirt on today. We're located in Arkansas, and and this particular day is game day, and my shop is attached to our store, and we'll have the game on when it comes on later, and I'll be in there watching it. So I've got my red shirt on today for the Razorbacks. Now I'm just going through and filling a lot more spots all over the table with epoxy, and that'll have time to set up while I'm watching the game. This is something that you'll have to do multiple times, and as you can see here, I've got a different shirt on. This is a different day, and I'm still putting epoxy in this top. That epoxy seeps down and gets deep into the wood, and then you've got to pour it again. I'll probably revisit a tabletop like this 4 or 5 times with epoxy until I'm happy with it. Now I'm getting the tabletop cut to width, and if you notice, I'm using that square in the middle of the table, not on the edges, because like I said earlier, those outside edges are not straight. I did not run those through the table saw. I kept that live edge, if you will, on both sides. So I've got to use the square in the middle of the table where the boards are straight. Now I'm going to measure both corners and make some lines down the other end. But I'm still going to verify that with the square even after I get it lined up with those measurements. I'm just going to use a little power planer to clean up some of the board. This is the bottom side of the tabletop, and I'm just cleaning up some of the high spots. And I'm going to get the belt sander out, and I won't use the belt sander on the top because once again I want to keep as much of that character as I can. The entire top will be just sanded with a random mortar sander. It takes a long time, but the bottom side we can use a belt sander on to smooth things out. And I'll actually find some more places later that I want to use a power planer on. You'll see me get it back out. And I don't show the whole sanding. I cut a lot of it out. I know you don't want to just sit here and watch me sand all day. I wouldn't want to either. So here I am back with the power planer. And we'll move on from sanding here in just a second. Now this is just a little 1/8 inch round over bit I'm using to go around the edges and the corners to soften them. Now I flipped the tabletop over. This is the top side, and I just wanted to give you a little idea of how much time that we'll spend with the random orbit sander on the top, and I cut a ton of it out because the video's too long already. Now we're going to get the legs cut, and I'm using big old 6x6s out of barns. And they add a ton of weight to the table, but a table this size, they look cool on. So This thing is a beast. It's got a little weight to it if you can't tell by how I'm moving it around there. This big old radial arm saw I'm using, when I bought it, I didn't really need it. I just couldn't pass it up when I came across it. But it has been nice to have in the shop for times like this. It's so hard to get a nice clean cut on there because these boards are not flat. That's some hard old oak, and it just slices through it like butter. Now I'm out in our warehouse getting parts for the rest of the table. I'm bringing in 2x4s to make my aprons out of. I'm going to be making twice as many as on everything because it has that bottom shelf down there. So there'll be 4 short aprons, 4 long aprons, and the long aprons on the top I will also double up. So there'll actually be 2, 4, 6 long aprons. Now these aprons are just like the top. The outside I'm going to keep that rough sawn look. So the back side will get jointed so they're flat, and one edge will get jointed so it's flat. And then I'll run the other side through the table saw. Yeah, earlier I was just cutting them to rough length. Now that they're milled, I'm going to come to their final length. And then we'll get tenons cut on them. I just use the tape measure to get the height on the blade because it's not crazy important that it's exactly 3/4. Whatever they end up being, I'll actually use the tenon itself to mark for the mortise here in a minute, which you'll see. So I want it close to that measurement, but it doesn't have to be that exact measurement. So. So you can see here I'm marking on that one leg where the tenons are going to be, and then I'm finding the center. And that's a little complicated with these because even in one leg you can have a different measurement from the top to the bottom. these were all just rough sawn probably out on the farm when they were building the barn. If you've seen some of the other projects we've built, I work a lot with new lumber, but I started with reclaimed lumber, and it's still kind of my passion. I love taking old wood that would have ended up in the garbage somewhere or burned, and making beautiful furniture out of it. I'm just cleaning up those mortises here. The mortiser does 99% of the work. I'm just cleaning the corners out. I always get my short side glued up first. We'll get it in clamps and we'll let them sit either overnight or all day before we, in this case, they sat overnight. I want to let that glue set on this joint before I stress it and start working on the long side. Coming back with some sawdust to clean up the glue squeeze out, just like we did on the top. Now here, I don't know if you noticed, but that bottom shelf does not go all the way across, and that's because the customer wanted to be able to put bar stools underneath there. So the other side of that shelf has to stop, halfway through this apron. This is the apron board between those two that you saw me gluing up just a minute ago, between the legs, the bottom apron. So I'm hand cutting a mortise into those. And yes, I could have laid this out ahead of time before I put the ends together and used the mortiser, but I didn't. And I'm far from an expert with a hand chisel. I'm not a big hand tool guy, so. Now this is a dry fit, and I'm going through this process so I can measure exactly how long that apron needs to be between those other two aprons. And I couldn't just use math to do that, because like I was saying earlier, those legs are all rough sawn and they're all slightly different sizes, and it'd just be really hard to try and figure that out, how long that apron needed to be, without actually putting it together and seeing it. So now I'm making the final apron that's going to go in between those two, and here I'm checking to make sure that my length was good after I got done cutting my tenons. Now this tenon is going to be different than the other ones because it's going to be centered. This apron needs to line up with the other aprons, and I cut my mortise right in the center of that, so this tenon needs to be centered on this apron. I'm just trying to dial it in and get it just right so it fits, so it'll fit well. I'm going to have James help me with this glue up because those, right now it's upside down, so the bottom two aprons, which will be on the top, I'm going to have him hold up for me until we get them secured in their mortises. Trying to get all those four lined up at the same time is a pain. Now I mentioned earlier I was going to double up those aprons, and this is a 9-foot table, and it's a crazy heavy table, so I just want to give it a little more strength by putting an extra board along this long apron. So that'll essentially be a 4x4 when I'm done there. Now this is I'm going to do 3 braces across the middle, and I'll glue and pocket screw those in place. You can see there's one already in there, and then there'll be this one and one on the other side also. And then I'll also do the same thing for the bottom shelf, which is up above my head right now. Now I'm just dialing in the braces that go in the corners. And I'll go back and forth to the miter saw until I get that one right, and then I'll just repeat that cut for the other 4. And then there'll be 4 that are a little different size for the once again for the bottom shelf there. Now I had filmed putting this bottom shelf together, but you've already seen me in this video glue up a panel, so I cut all that out. So like I said earlier, the video, at almost 30 minutes is long enough, I felt, so I've tried to cut as much out as I could and still catch everything. Now I had a problem here. You can see that big crack in the board, and it actually broke off before I got my cut finished. So I finished that cut with the table saw, and then put that little piece back on with epoxy. I'd planned on epoxying that big crack anyway, so I just got that little piece put back on there and filled that space with epoxy at the same time I did that crack, which you can see right there. And that's a perfect fit. So just like the top, I spend a lot of time sanding these reclaimed wood projects because I'm really trying to keep all the character that I can. So just take our time and spend a lot of time sanding. Now I'm going around with the router with that 1/8 inch round over bit and just softening the bottom side of those aprons. So if someone ever reaches underneath there to pick the table up and move it, it has a nice soft edge to it. And I'm cleaning up that epoxy here. This is the bottom side, and as you can tell, that epoxy leaked out of my tape quite a bit. and I used way more epoxy than I needed to. But getting that tape to stick to this rough sawn wood doesn't work out very well. I used the belt sander to clean up all that extra epoxy waste on the bottom side there. And if you'll look at these boards on one side of the sander and on the other, you can see the huge difference, how they really come to life as you go through and sand it and get all that 100 years of dirt and just old grit cleaned off those legs, or off that wood. On projects like this, I love to use a flat finish. It just keeps it looking more natural. And this is from Vermont Natural Coatings, ultra flat finish. It's an awesome finish. We've been using it for years. They have a satin that we use on a lot of projects also, but on projects like this, I really like the flat. My customers, when they come in the store, a lot of times don't even realize there's a finish on there until you feel it. When you put your hand on and feel it, you can tell it's there. But just by looking at it, a lot of times they don't see it. So we put adjustable feet on all of our projects, and that's what we're doing right there. We'll get this bottom shelf attached. I'll get the top shelf attached, and this table will be done. So like I said earlier, this is going to be a kitchen island, so it's a little taller than an average table, a dining table. It's 36 inches tall. That top is heavy. Alright guys, that's the project. I hope you liked it. We'll continue putting videos out. I would love for you to like this video and to subscribe to our channel. If you have any questions or comments, make sure you leave them below. And thanks for watching.